Good evening. This is Town of Ayer Zoning Board of Appeals. Wednesday, July 20th, 2022, 6 p.m. Open session in person and remote participation meeting agenda. This meeting/hearing of the Ayer Zoning Board of Appeals will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note, while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in the specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. Public may access proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID number 857-9728-7177 or by calling 312-626-6799. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100 prior to the meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Next item on the agenda, we're going to open the public hearing for the application for a comprehensive permit, Mass General Law 40B, Sections 20 to 23, Neighborhood of Affordable Housing, Inc., 65 Fitchburg Road, filed June 24th, 2022. Application materials can be found at ayer.ma.us/zoning board appeals/pages/Ayer Commons proposed comprehensive permit 40B. All right, project proponents.
Actually, Mr. Chair, we have to read the notice. Do you have that on? It was in the packet,
All right.
the meeting notice.
Oh. Uh,
Should be on the second page
Yeah, I
of the
got it.
packet.
Town of Ayer Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing notice. Notice is hereby given that Ayer Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at Ayer Town Hall, 1 Main Street, Ayer, Mass. on the petition of the Neighborhood of Affordable Housing, Inc., 143 Broad Street, East Boston, 02128, relative to an application for a comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, Sections 20-23, seeking authorization for construction of 106 rental dwelling units on the property located at 65 Fitchburg Road, Ayer, Mass. A copy of the application is on file at the office of the town clerk, Town Hall, 1 Main Street, Ayer, Mass. Any persons interested may review said petition and appear at the hearing. If special services, assistance, or accommodations are required to participate in this meeting, please contact the town manager's office within sufficient time prior to the scheduled meeting time. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with the applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. For Zoom in or call information, please contact atm@ayer.ma.us or call 978-772-8220, extension 100. Now, said same thing twice. Project proponent. Please come forward. You have a presentation, I understand.
We do, yes. And our presentation this evening will probably last about 20 to 25 minutes is my
That's fine.
anticipation.
You don't, we're not doing a clock.
No, just to give everyone a heads up and manage expectations.
Please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Stephanie Kiefer. I'm with the law firm Smolak and Vaughn from North Andover and represent the applicant, the Neighborhood of Affordable Housing, or NOAA as it's known. With me this evening, we have members of our team, both virtually as well as in person. From NOAA, we have Phil Giffey and Annika Lambert. We have our civil engineer, Taylor Dowdy from the BSC group. And virtually, we have our project architect, Frank Valdez from DeMella Schaefer, and Sharon Lowenthal, our housing consultant, virtually. This evening, what we were hoping to do is I was just going to give an overview of the project and how we're before the board on this 40B application, turn the presentation over briefly to Phil to introduce you to NOAA and let him know the good work that NOAA has done, as well as kind of the commitment and efforts that we've been working on for 2 years and able to get to you to present this project that we're very proud of. From there, the BSC group will orient the board to the project site, give you some of the highlights of the design and the layout of it, and then Frank, our project architect, will walk the board through the layout, the buildings, and kind of how the design approach was arrived at and what we're looking at. So just to quickly advise the board, or you've probably seen the information packet, the property, 65 Fitchburg Road, is a 10.5 acre site, and what we're proposing is a redevelopment. It's currently used for landscaping business. There's a welding shop on there. There's an abandoned house. Those uses will no longer exist, and we're proposing 100% affordable housing development to be developed in 2 phases, as both BSC Group and Frank will kind of walk you through, so I don't want to keep repeating myself.
Just tell me when you want to, or you can just click this.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Let me see where I am on this. So again, just the outline of our presentation this evening. And once we get to the end of it, we're happy to take any questions that the board may have of us at this time. This is an overview presentation. And likewise, our hope is that we can kind of work with the board and have the board identify what they see as the key issues. We found that in moving forward in project review of 40Bs, because it's a comprehensive permit, the easier and the earlier in the process that the key issues are identified, we can work then towards perhaps assigning topographical hearings. So both the board, the public, the developers team come prepared to know, for instance, the next hearing may be devoted to civil, stormwater, wetlands issues. The one after that, architectural and traffic. Again, we can hit that at the end of it, but just to kind of give the board an idea of what we think tends to work. And the board, of course, may have its own ideas, and I know that the board is being assisted this evening by Attorney Haverty. Paul is a great 40B consultant for boards. I've worked with him in the past, and so I think that if there's any, very neutral questions that you have, and you're worried about asking a developer or an applicant, Paul is a great resource. My understanding is he's probably already given you a 40B training, so you have a sense of where that is. With that said, again, this project is being submitted under Chapter 40B of the general laws, and so just for everyone's, so we're all on the same page, it's a comprehensive permit, meaning comprehensive as to all local permitting. It's done just through this board, and we've seen the preliminary comment letters come in from the other departments and staff, which is very helpful. And I think that once we get through this preliminary hearing, we can build upon that, and we'll provide, more formal responses to the extent that department and staff or the board has questions relative to that. Again, under 40B, the applicant meets the preliminary criteria. So under 40B, 3 types of entities may present an application: a public entity, a nonprofit, or a limited dividend entity. it's a community development corporation, a nonprofit. It's been doing great work kind of in the greater Boston area for 30 years. And
You get your letter from the state though, right?
we did get our letter, yes. So the next is that it's the project is approved through a project eligibility. And in November of 21, we received a project eligibility letter from DHCD. The project is being proposed with funding through the LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, and through the project eligibility, the Department of Housing and Community Development has recognized that the project is generally eligible for that. It conducted a site visit. It recognized that the site was generally appropriate, that the proposed project was generally appropriate. Now, obviously, those are kind of the programmatic sides of 40B. The board itself determines, and raises its concerns or its questions that it has about the project design. But just so you know, the state has issued that project eligibility as of November. And then the third element, obviously, for a 40B is that the applicant have site control, and NOAA has the project under a valid purchase and sale agreement. All of those materials were included within our application package.
P&S was in there?
A redacted copy of the PNS, yes.
Okay.
With that said, just a very brief overview again of the project. It's on a 10.5 acre site, a redevelopment. It will be 100% affordable. It's proposed to be developed in 2 phases. The first phase, I believe, is 64 total units. The second one, 42. And the first phase is proposed along the Fitchburg Road, so kind of that'll give that a street face to the project.
Parallel.
Yes, parallel. And then the second phase is just a single building design. It's a 4-story, and it will be somewhat off behind that. Again, both BSC and Frank can walk the board more fully through that. And with that being said, I don't want to be too repetitive of what you're going to hear from our other presenters. I am going to turn this over to Phil Giffey to briefly introduce the board to NOAA, the work that they do, the work that they've done in getting this project to be before the zoning board this evening. There's been a lot of work and a lot of good effort, and we're pleased to present the board this evening.
Thank you, Stephanie. We can turn to the next one if I go forward. Back.
Click.
The other way, okay.
Yeah.
So again, my name is Phil Giffey. I work at NOAA, Neighborhood of Affordable Housing in East Boston, where I've been for a long time. I had more here a long time ago. I lived there for 27 years. I live in Framingham right now. I'm very fortunate to have a great staff. Annika Lambert is here, among others, who work behind the scenes to keep us. If you look at our audits, we're all very good. We've done this work for a long time. We started out doing a lot of 3-deckers in our own neighborhood. We probably have done 40 buildings of rental size. We probably sold about 42 properties in the neighborhood as well. Everybody's heard about affordable housing crisis and problems. They've been around for a long time. We know we have one here, I think, and they've been publishing this for a long time. So about 2006, we sort of stepped out of the neighborhood and started doing work collaboration with cities and towns throughout Greater Boston, from Holliston to Webster to North Andover to right now in Taunton and other communities. So we're very happy to now be welcomed into Ayer. We've had a great, I think, couple of years. It seems like it's gone very fast. Anyway, we've been talking with members of the town and officials to sort of make sure we're on the right track, that we're doing the right thing, we're in the right place, doing something that the town wants, and that's what we call this a friendly 40B. So we hope to again receive your comments and turn them back into something that's quite visible and useful and practical over a period of time, as Stephanie said, in 2 phases. So the top bullet is our mission statement. So we don't just do affordable housing, we do a lot of work in the neighborhood, bringing people together. It's a very diverse community, so we work on such things as climate change, which we're all getting too familiar with. I won't say more on that, other than we've been around for 35 years. Sometimes people think of us, well, you just do social services, you talk to a lot of people. What do you really do? But if you start adding up the value of what we do, that adds up to $600 million in people's pockets and in the Commonwealth. So when we build this, give or take $30 million, we'll add to that particular total and go on from there. So when people buy houses, we do foreclosure prevention, we do financial fitness classes, people buy a house, that gets totaled up, and we add wealth, and we think to the Commonwealth. So when people invest in this and the public dollars go into the project, it isn't just into my pocket. That's why we're a CDC. I get paid, I have a board of directors, we respond to that. I don't just take the money and give it on, and then we go to Bermuda for the winter. That doesn't happen. So the money that we invest and the public invest in these projects go back in to kind of fund the kind of projects that I've been describing here. Yes, sir.
How did we get to give or take 30 mil? You skip right past that. You give or take 30 mil?
Well, I think the project, Sharon is here, I don't have the pro forma number, but I think total TDC is about.
Yes, our TDC is about $30 million for both phases of the project. So phase one phase one is $30 million, which will also do some site preparation for phase two. The bulk of the cost of investment right now, $30 million is our TDC just for phase one, which is what we're currently going through permitting for.
So you keep using that TDC.
Total development cost.
Thank you. And Phil, slow down a little bit.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
get
you
accused of
were
that all the
flying,
time.
And I talk fast, and
I
you
know,
were.
I know,
You
my
were
wife
throwing
did,
through.
but I'm
Slow down
sorry.
a little bit.
I'll try.
And when you use acronyms like TDC, please explain it.
I will do that. Thank you for the
Thank
reminder. That happened. In any case, we repeat, we've worked with many cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth, and we're very glad to be working now in Ayer with you. I think we have a broad familiarity with what goes on in the region, so what we do both housing counseling and foreclosure prevention. We got 110 cities and towns in the region. Climate change, like I said, we're all familiar with what that means, extreme temperatures. We're all now watching TV and know what happens. So I think we'll try to build in resiliency and sustainability features into this building. That includes photovoltaic, and Frank from Demolish Neighbor can talk about those in more detail. But it's just a brief overview. I'm happy to come back and talk slower if you like, sorry for the speed, but I know we want to get through this as well. So with what you want to get into the substance of what we're talking about, I think I'm going to turn it over to Taylor. Thank you.
Hi, Taylor Dowdy with BSC Group. We're site design engineers. If I could, can I use this,
Yep,
please? Thank you.
just click to go forward.
There we go. So again, as Stephanie mentioned, we're at 65 Fitchburg Road. This is the existing site. Generally speaking, it's about 10.5 acres, bisected right in the middle by a wetland system. It does contain an intermittent stream. The existing uses on site, it's a mix match of a welding business, a landscaping laydown yard. I think there's an old house that's abandoned at the moment. It could use some sprucing up to put it nicely. Again, as a general overview, this seems like a very good area for development, especially with the grocery store almost right across the street. That's also showing downtown Ayer and the train station. I think we're less than a mile from the commuter rail there. This is the existing conditions plan. What's in gray, that's generally speaking the landscape area. We looked at that, did some soils analysis. It's mostly very poor impervious conditions. All the site runoff probably doesn't have a lot of infiltration associated with it. It just runs straight into that wetland system, which is shown in green there, in darker green. And then the rear of the property, it goes back up, and I think that the cul-de-sac there on the right that's just off property, that's Isaac Lane, if you're familiar with the area. Again, this is a 3D view of the proposed development. Phase one that we're discussing would be these set of homes up front, along with this building and the community building. This in the back, the 4-story building, that would be part of phase two. I do have more detailed site plans to show. So this is our layout materials plan. Again, it's like I said, it's 2 phases. We have, as Stephanie mentioned, we have met with town staff over the past couple of years, mostly via Zoom. We've incorporated a lot of their comments already, so we feel like we've done some good legwork leading up to tonight. We're utilizing a compact design. We had tighter driveway width so that we can avoid the wetland buffer impacts as much as possible.
Well, how does that adversely affect traffic through the particularly larger equipment like trucks are firing.
So we have modeled emergency vehicles going through the site. It does not create an adverse impact. We do have appropriate radii at each intersection, and we're happy to provide those diagrams
Yeah.
to you.
Do you,
Go ahead.
do you plan on doing any improvements to Fitchburg Road?
At
You
the
can't put that many pieces of real estate together and leave the infrastructure as it is. I mean, I would imagine you're gonna have, how many apartments are in the first batch? 60?
64. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
All things being equal,
aside-
that's another 60 cars coming in and out of that road. That's a damn small road. So are you going to do something with Fitchburg Road, or are you leaving it the way it is?
I mean, we can talk to our traffic engineers about possibilities in terms of the road itself. I mean, that's a DOT
I
controlled
know
road.
it's a state road, I
And
understand.
we'd have to talk to them as well.
But I would think
Um,
that if you're going to affect the infrastructure as you are, there has to be some consolation to the road. I mean, you just can't leave 60, I don't know if it's a traffic light, turn lanes, whatever the case may be. There's something that road will have to be addressed right here.
I think the best answer we can give you at the moment, Stephanie, we can get into that at
That's
the
fine.
traffic hearing.
I just-
think that, yeah.
We do have a traffic study that is mostly complete, and we're in the process of imminently submitting to you all.
We'll get to it.
Okay. Anyway, so I think generally speaking, this design is environmentally speaking, a vast improvement over existing conditions. We are infiltrating just about 100% of the rainwater that falls on the site, cleaning it up before any discharge to the wetlands. Like I mentioned, we do have a greater setback to the wetlands. And I'd like to talk for just a second about that wetland system. About half of it does contain an intermittent stream, which also is habitat listed by NHESP for Blanding's turtle. We did have our scientists go out and do an evaluation of that, and they submitted that to NHESP. It does not appear to be a good area for Blanding's turtle to either mate, winter over, or generally just reside in. It's a very dry system. It's not wet and sloppy at all. Our environmental scientist is not here tonight, but at one of the future hearings, we can have them come in and explain in greater detail what that means. But generally speaking, from a layman's point of view, it means that they didn't find any evidence of a Blanding's turtle, and it's their opinion that is not a good habitat for them to survive and operate.
You said something about when you finish it, the soil will be different. Right now, you said it runs off. Everything runs off. Nothing soaks in. And now,
Correct. And now we're proposing an infiltration systems throughout the site
how?
that collects the rainwater into catch basins
Okay.
and goes through underground pipes into an underground Coltech recharge system.
Okay.
And that's how it's absorbing into the soil. We're forcing it to go underground.
Okay. Thank you.
Also on site, there was a historic hit for a species called climbing fern, which is just off site right there. NHESP had recommended that we have a 75-foot radii away from that, from a proposed development condition. We've respected that. They're happy with that finding. We went out there and looked for any evidence of climbing fern, and there is none today. So this is an old hit from years and years and years ago. So we're providing a setback off that, just to respect the previous condition. Utility connections. Most of the utilities, especially water, is going out to Fitchburg Road. We do have a pump station that is collecting all the sewage on site. I'm pointing to it right here. And we are pumping, we do have one wetland crossing just with the sewer pipe that will be below ground. And we're pumping it up to a manhole that's up here in the back of the property. Happy to take any other questions related to the site conditions.
Excuse me, I have a question, sir. You just mentioned about pumping water up to that manhole to the north of your map there.
Excuse me. We'll take questions when the presentations are done.
I was unaware, sir.
Thank you. Hold, you can hold it. though. I'm wondering along the same lines.
It's in my backyard, so I'm curious.
Fair enough.
I'm happy to take any questions, or we can turn it over to the project architect.
Turn over to the project architect.
Okay. He is, Carla, he's online.
Oh, okay, got it.
And Taylor, would you be able to switch the slides for me as I speak or no?
Yep.
Thank you. So this is just a general overview of some of the bullet points that I'm going to hit on the presentation. We can go back to them, but I just wanted to just clearly brief them so that you can see them and go back and understand some of the components next. As mentioned by Taylor, the site of the proposed residential development by NOAA is approximately 1 mile from the Ayer MBTA commuter rail station within the Ayer Main Street Historic District. The entrance of the complex will be off of Fitchburg Road. The front edge of the development facing Fitchburg Road will be composed of 5 two-story residential buildings, creating a typical residential front to define the street wall as a residential development. Similar in context to other streets in Ayer and in other neighborhoods that we can find, this was a requirement and it was a discussion point that we've had with some of the town members from the beginning. So we wanted to showcase that we really wanted to create a front to the development and not have the buildings give up back to the street. Next slide. As mentioned before as well, the development will be phased, with phase 1 being composed of 5 two-story buildings, 1 central 3-story building, and 1-story community center building, offering amenity spaces for the community. In total, phase 1 will be composed of about 64 units spread throughout the 6 buildings with a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. In this initial development, 4 of the units will be fully ADA accessible per the MAAB requirements. There will be 1 bedroom that will be fully ADA, there will be 2 2-bedrooms, and there will be 1 3-bedroom that will be fully ADA accessible. It's a requirement of 5% that we're complying with. Next. Many studies have been done to arrive to the best placement for the buildings in relationship to its context, solar orientation, views, and to create a residential community. The architecture of the buildings will be used using pitch roofs at the best angle to take advantage of the southern orientation for solar panel placement. It is the intent of the development that we will be placing solar panels on the roofs of these buildings in order to take advantage of that. The materiality of the facades will be such as to maintain a warm and elegant residential aesthetic, using wood textures and a variety of cement panels, both vertical and horizontal. We have also introduced balconies to further enhance the residential feel, to add eyes to the street for safety, and for places for the residents to enjoy views and sunlight. What you're seeing here is an example of what we refer to as Building A and Building B. Building A is composed of all 1-bedrooms. Building B is composed of all 2-bedrooms. Go next. Here you see an example as well of Building C, the larger building at the bottom in blue, which is composed of all 3 bedrooms. Above you also see a plan of the 1-story community building that we are proposing. The community building really will maintain a series of communal spaces that will enhance the development. The central mail and package area will be located here to encourage interaction among the residents. There will be a community space for gathering. There will also be obviously a leasing office component to it, and there'll also be some health and fitness components associated with it. We also anticipate potentially that some of the owners living here, some of the residents living here will have pets, so we are allocating as well a small pet spa, if you will, where people can go and wash their dogs freely when they go out on the woods and they're like enjoying nature. And then we also have a dog park. Next. It is also important to point out at this point that the development is aiming to be a fire certified. We are designing this as a passive house component, and it's 100% electric. The passive house design means that we will have an extremely energy efficient buildings that do not take a lot of power to heat and cool. We're very proud of this, and it will be an amazing development taking advantage of these passive house components. Next. This is a plan of phase 2, as you can see. Phase 2 will be a single building development similar stylistically to phase 1, but concise that this building will be 4 stories, 3/1 construction. The first floor will be have the lobby component, an entry component of it, but it will also house 44 spaces of parking within the structure. The upper 3 floors will have a total of 42 units. The building mass is broken up into wings as if creating 2 buildings to reduce the overall scale. The elevator lobby, the floor managers lounge will be centrally located with large panes of glass to bring natural light into the building as well as views and to further break the mass of the 2 buildings. Go to next. This is the distribution of the units, as you can see, with the 2 wings, and really bringing this middle component of light so that it gathers people as well as light, and it has views towards nature. Next. And here you can see some of the elevations as well of phase 2. You can quickly go through the units. This is just some of the unit plans. If there was any questions, we can always go back to them. You can go to the landscape plans as well, Taylor, and we'll just say we have developed as well at this point a pretty developed landscape plan in coordination with our consultants. We have really designed the landscape to be to not be overwhelming or intrusive, but to really be enhancing of everything that is being done, to reduce the scale as well as the development, and to add areas of gathering and to be able to enjoy the nature component, almost trying to bring the natural component of its surrounding into the site as much as possible. This is my presentation. If there's any questions, I am happy to answer them.
And Frank, just to give the board a little bit of context, this area here that I'm pointing to, that would be the proposed dog.
That is correct. We are proposing an enclosed area for the dog park for people to have an option to bring their dogs into that park as well, yes.
As well as a green area behind the community for
and
just
part of it, correct,
residents.
Part of the community has an outdoor space that will be programmed for people to have outdoor activities in that. And the idea of this community center is to really work as a pinwheel for the community so that everything comes to the center and people can gather and meet there and then go back to their residences. But it's really the pinwheel, the heart of the whole development.
And then just one thing I'm going to bring up that I don't think we've touched on is the parking. So as Frank referenced in his presentation, we have a combination of surface parking and some structured parking. So phase 1, the total number of parking that we're proposing is 157 parking spaces. The covered parking would be developed within phase 2, and I believe that's 44 of the structured parking, with 20 units of surface parking in phase 2, and then the balance would be constructed during phase 1.
Do you anticipate that being assigned or just free for all?
We've not yet discussed that, but generally the intention would be the people that are living in the larger building in the phase 2 would have that. So it's 42 units there, 44 spaces. So I don't know if it would be assigned, but it would be a rough equivalency, you know?
Well, we tried to distribute the parking spaces in such a way that there would be enough parking spaces, parking for each of the buildings within proximity, and the surplus adding for visitors and people with second cars. But the intent of the design is that there would be parking for the community for each building within proximity.
Do you have fewer spots than bedrooms?
They do.
Yes, we've requested a waiver. It's in our waiver list, and you raise a good point though, and just to we haven't gone through that, but as part of our application, we submitted a preliminary waiver list, and typically, my experience is, as the hearings progress, it gets refined a little bit more. So it's the preliminary one, and we can, you know.
But you said 150 parking spaces.
157.
157 for 106, actually 182 bedrooms. So that, we'll work on that.
Okay.
I don't know where it falls statistically, but it's
So that comes to like about a
Is it
1.48, 1.5 ratio.
That's what I think, it's the way it came out, yes.
Correct. The intent of it is that we're trying to, in a lot of these developments that we've done, because of the proximity to commuter rail, as well as our history and understanding of the needs of vehicular for affordable housing, there's typically about a lower demand of parking that we've seen throughout all of our developments that we've done. It is typical of something like that we've seen.
I don't know too many families that are not at least 2 cars. Literally.
I completely understandable. I think that what we're saying is that we've seen it, that in a lot of the affordable housing developments that we've done, there's typically a 1 car per family, and it comes to the idea of it's really the logistics of the income and just really the facilities of the needs of the people. We're also trying to be respectful of the site and try not to add as much parking to be obstructive to the development of its surrounding and its nature. Trying to balance a little bit of both.
All right. That concludes our formal presentation for this evening. We're happy while we have a number of the project team members here, if the board has any follow-up questions that they wish to have at this time. And then otherwise, again, we would just suggest that by the end of this evening's meeting, that we perhaps identify kind of how the board sees the key issues and then assign topical meetings moving forward. I don't know if the board has discussed whether or not they're going to seek peer review for anything, so perhaps another topic to discuss this evening. With that said, we are happy to field any questions the board may have.
If we have any questions from the board, we'll take them now. If not, I'll open it up to the public. John?
So let me go through before I can develop my questions, because we haven't really been exposed to a whole lot of that. I'm looking for guidance as to what we're going to be. I don't want to.
We'll get to that. We have.
I understand. So I can't really do the questions until I know what's going to fall on this table, because there's a lot of stuff in the information that probably is other boards and stuff, and so.
It's usually us, right?
It's all you.
It's all us. We talk to the other boards. They give us their input, but it's laying on this table.
And there's a little bit that goes to Conservation Commission under the Wetland Protection
Under the state act, exactly, yes. So anything that is a state act, just like state building code, so those local officials that administer state laws still do that under a 40B, but the zoning board is the issuer of a comprehensive permit.
We have to go through we'll go through the waiver list. It's quite, is it 10 pages?
Yeah.
10
Probably
pages of,
9 or 10.
9 or 10 pages of a waiver list. I mean, this is things that we're going to be going through over the next 5-6 months, I would think.
Yeah.
This is not tonight, dude. This is just the opening of the door. Rod, do you have any questions? Jess? Based on what we've heard so far.
Yeah, just, I mean, one thing I want to hear more about is, so you're saying water is coming in through Fitchburg Road, but sewer would be coming in the back area towards Isaac Lane?
That's correct. There is an existing town sewer line on the back side of the property, and we are proposing a pump from the front, crossing the wetland and pumping to that town line to discharge sewer.
The only other question I had pertaining to the traffic, or the parking that you raised, was you say typically other 40Bs haven't needed a larger ratio of car, or parking spaces. Does that apply to 40Bs in areas like this that don't have much in the way of public transportation nearby?
I would say that, and our traffic engineer is in here today, but the ratio of just about 1.5 is generally, in a more urbanized area, you can get lower, actually. You know, and one of the benefits of this site is it is within approximately a mile, I believe, of the commuter rail station. And so it's not a half mile, but a mile is relatively, you know, a close distance. And so, yes, and one other point is some of 40B projects, the requirement is only that 25% be affordable, and the other 75% can be market rate. This project is 100% affordable. You know, kind of you see a pattern or a trend that when it's going to be a more affordable project, the parking requirements, they are diminished. I did one a little further west, and it was 100% affordable to pretty much, you know, they can go gradients 80%, 60%, 30%, and this project I'm speaking of was more, the majority was 30%, and they may not have even had a one-to-one for the parking. It's again, I'm not going to get too far out of my lane though, and I'll let Sam, our traffic engineer, at a subsequent hearing, speak to the board more fully on that.
So I don't really have questions at this time. I did do a brief dive into NOAA. I think it was your project in Hawkington. One of the things I liked was that from the site that I could tell, you developed it pretty tight. And one of my big concerns as we go through this, because no one in town is going to argue that we don't need affordable housing, because we do. My big concern here really is going to be the site work that you guys are proposing as it relates to the folks who already live on Isaac Lane. It's John Riley a little further up. You know, this is going to be a big change for them. And so as we go through this process, I'd ask for your understanding, you know, cooperation and patience as we go through that process, because Fitchburg Road, you know, in terms of residential development, I mean, there's only a couple houses that, you know, are in here. But Isaac Lane backs right up to it. You're going to be in somebody's backyard with this new 106 unit development, 100, whatever it is. So that's one of my big concerns with this project. And again, Ron, I think, is one of the only folks who's done anything with 40B in the past. Is that correct? So, you know, I don't have much experience with this, so this will be a learning process as we go through this. So, again, patience is going to be key.
The one, your point that you make is a very good point. The one kind of preliminary response I have is that and Taylor can jump in here, but the development itself is I think it's largely within the envelope of the already kind of disturbed site, if you will. And so by virtue of, you know, keeping it there, but also, you know, by virtue, quite frankly, of natural environmental things, you know, we're staying away from that intermittent stream. So to the properties that are back off Isaac Lane, it's going to be maintaining pretty much that vegetative buffer that they currently have to a developed site, you know, save for the fact that, as we suggested, that we would need to bring the sewer line down from Isaac Lane. So, Taylor, you can correct anything.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. And it looks like Carly's bringing up the plan again. So yeah, the good news is that Isaac Lane is definitely up on what I would consider the non-developed portion side of our property. And again, that the corner where we do abut Isaac Lane, we are protected by that 75-foot radii of the historical climbing fern hit. Yep. That, in effect, is 150 feet in diameter. So,
What's up here? Show me where that ties in.
may I approach the
Please.
screen? Or
Is this
I can use
right?
this.
Is this the right plan, this one?
I want to know where that sewer line's going.
It is just, I'm going to go to the next page. this is working. Oop. Previous.
You can hit those arrows on the bottom back there. If you hover down on the bottom left.
Thank you. There's a manhole right there. Right at the tip of the mouse.
What is this property up there,
Right here?
out through there?
That's right out by Groton School Road, right?
Yes, I believe that backs up. I'd have to confirm via aerial, but I believe that backs up to Groton School Road.
Which is somebody's backyard.
Somebody's backyard, okay. All right. There's that.
Yeah.
We have no further questions. I'd like to open up questions from the public. You, sir? Name, your name?
Marshall, 9 John Riley Road. That sewer main is like behind my house. I guess I really don't have any concern now where it looks like the development's not really going to be on that stream, which would pretty much stay away from the residents back there. But what about disturbance all the way back there to the sewer drain? You know, right now it's a wooded area, it's nice. You know, it's nice and private. You come in disturbing, trying to get a line up there, you're gonna lose a lot of trees. Some of them, I'll be happy to tell you which ones to take down. But, you know, that's one of our concerns is what's it gonna look like looking out on our deck after you guys have been in there with equipment and taking trees down and stuff like that?
Please.
So yeah, I mean, the good news is that it's not we're not doing a clear cut by any stretch of the imagination. To install any type of utility line, it's a fairly innocuous process, even through the middle of woods. You know, you have to clear your path. It may be 6 to 8 feet wide just to get the equipment through there. But generally speaking, you're talking about digging a 2-foot wide trench so that you can get the pipe into the bottom of it. And we would restore the wooded area into the natural condition. We certainly wouldn't plant trees.
No, you can't
On top
plant
of
a tree
a
on
sewer
top of
line.
sewer line. That's a bad idea.
But we would cover it up and you know, try to vegetate it with you know, loam and seed basically to make it go back to natural.
The only other concern that I would have is you talked about stormwater being forced underground. In my experience, in the last 14 years of living in John Riley, that's a bad plan because that's what they did in ours. And all the water from the top of Groton School is under the ground behind my backyard, about 8 feet from that sewer line. So in the springtime, if there was fish out there, you could go fishing.
I
If
believe-
there's 2 feet of water out there.
I believe
If
you're
you start
saying
disturbing that, it's going to make it worse.
it's going to be collected and distributed. It's not
Going
going.
to the ground, right?
Explain that again,
Yeah, no problem.
please.
So
I might have misunderstood it.
so we are collecting them within catch basin space periodically throughout the site.
Yeah.
There are 3 locations of underground recharge where we're doing. One is where I'm pointing to now, at this area. One is here at the back, and another is right here near the dog park. Those are detained and recharged into the ground. Any overflow that is not recharged would end up within this wetland system, and
It's going to be like a leach field under?
and it's not a leach field per se, like a classic
Well,
sewer
basically, that's
system.
what it is. If you're done
Well,
with
that's
putting it
the
back underground, it's perforated pipe in stone.
It's actually an open bottom U. I call it. It's a U-shaped structure,
Yes.
and on the bottom is 6 inches of stone.
That's a leach field.
Okay, that's sure. And then it goes to any overflow would go to the stream that's not recharged into the ground, and the stream actually travels in this direction.
So
you're
it's
gonna have
a
water.
stormwater drain.
Stormwater only.
Yeah.
So you're going to have water coming from both directions to that stream because you would not believe the water that's behind my house because of that system. It just didn't work in our system. Hopefully you guys are better at what.
Right. I mean, we have done we've done all the calculations. The town engineer commented that while he hasn't done a full review yet, we welcome any future reviews he might do. We've done the soils analysis. We've done the soils analysis on the wooded side of the property as well. We feel pretty good about our numbers.
And also just to fill it in,
Do,
I'm sorry.
when you did your analysis, what time of year did you do it?
Stormwater doesn't necessarily run by time of year, it runs by magnitude of storm. So the Massachusetts stormwater standards prescribe that you analyze the 2, 10, and 100-year rainfall event over a 24-hour period. So those are the storms we've analyzed. We're reducing peaks. We're not sending all the water rushing to the stream at once. We're slowing it down. That's part of how the recharge system works. And actually, I forgot to mention, we're cleaning the water up prior to the water being recharged through underground storm tech units, where they swirl the water into a chamber, and as much TSS, total suspended solids, are deposited into the bottom of the chamber. There will be a maintenance component in future years where they may have to get a vacuum truck out there and clean it up 2 to 4 times per year. That's very typical. It's not unheard of. In fact, I'd be willing to bet NOAA does it on their other sites already.
Do you do test pits on these grounds? Have you
We
done
did
these?
do test pits, yes, that's in the stormwater report.
Okay.
Sam?
Yes, Jess.
So 2 questions. One would be on that sewer line, would you use horizontal directional drilling underground for any portion of that to minimize clearing above? Or?
I don't have a good answer for that yet. We did think about it, and I'm not ready to commit to doing that. It's a lot of times you end up creating, and this sounds very weird, but you create less disturbance by doing an open cut crossing the wetland. If you do an open bore directional drilling, you have a huge pit on one side and a huge pit on the other side, which is going to cause a massive loss of wooded area on each side in order to get that pipe jacked across.
And then the second question was, when your stormwater calculations say the existing surface is very bad for water filtration. With all the residences, do you anticipate an increase in water runoff, or would it pretty much stay the same, but just it's different
so
surfaces?
we call it matching peaks, and we're not truly matching peaks. We are reducing it ever so slightly. Just the nature of the business, you can never 100% nail if you have 6 CFS going cubic feet per second.
I'm just wondering if that might
we may be at
address some of your
5.8.
concerns, that it wouldn't
Yes.
increase water coming
Yeah,
into the
because
area.
Did they answer your questions?
He did, like you said, it's a leach. So when you have excessive rain and a quick melt like we did this spring, the ground's still frozen, that water's got no place to go. It leaches up. It doesn't leach into the
Right.
ground, it leaches up.
I
So that's
Believe me, I'm
what I
100%.
see on my street.
I 100% hear what you're saying, but at the same time, on this developed property, I don't see how that water is not rushing directly into the wetland right now, all at once and flooding.
It has been kind of dry.
Oh, this year, no question, it's been dry,
Yeah.
especially this month.
What was your property like last year? It rained every other day last year.
It's the same thing every year. Spring and throughout when it rains, it does. I mean, I can't grow grass in the back of my yard because there's so much water underground. But that's my scenario, because I'm at the bottom of the cul-de-sac. All the water runs behind my house. It's by a catch basin, it drags behind my house, right to where you're going to work.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, that street is significantly higher than this development. Is that fair to say? It's not?
Well, the development is, where that sewer drain is, that's my house right there. So all that
Yeah.
drain water
So that's-
comes to that spot.
That's what I'm saying.
From where you're going to be working.
Our development is significantly lower than where your house is. And you can see that on the topo maps.
Oh, correct, from that?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. I'm just saying the system in general just
Okay.
didn't work in that area. I'd be concerned if it's leaching that way towards where my house is. Now you're pushing 2 different storm drain waters to one location, away from properties.
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, we're meeting the 10 state standards in the Mass Stormwater bylaw. We do have a conservation filing to make, and they will be reviewing it as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir?
We'd probably like to see what trees would be like to be taken down. We're not going to take down a forest, but there's some trees in the vicinity that might be useful to be reviewed, that we might know what those are, so if we're doing some work out there, maybe we can bring our clippers and take them down, we'll see.
Any other public comments, questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Janet Providence, 1 Berlin Court. I'm a commissioner on the Ayer Housing Authority, and I just want to make sure that you guys, and I know you're probably all aware, because I think you have spoken to Ken Martin with regards to the property over at Isaac Lane, but if you touch any part of Isaac Lane, it's owned by DHCD, so you have to go ahead and go through DHCD. I just want to make sure.
What?
I know you guys are probably aware.
It's housing authority property.
No, I missed part of it. I didn't hear what you said.
No,
Isaac Lane?
is housing authority property, and if any changes are gonna happen there, they've gotta go through DHCD. So that's gonna be another state
Thank you.
organization. All right.
Yes,
Yeah,
Ken?
Mr. Chair, so this is a general question, probably somewhat uneasy. Your normal schedule for meetings is once a month.
Don't ask.
Excuse me?
Don't ask.
I'm gonna ask. It's project this nature is
See this?
extremely critical.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be once a month.
Okay, thank you. One other question, for, if you don't mind, on an engineering basis. Was there a reason that you did not use any street drainage for part of the project rather than sending it all, keeping, I know all about keeping it on site, I put up install projects just like that. Or was there a reason that you didn't take advantage of street drainage? Is there no drainage to take advantage of?
When you say street drainage, do you mean
Is
like
it-
no curbs and runoff straight into?
No, I'm talking about connecting to,
so-
system existing on the road.
On Fitchburg
A town
Road,
system.
I see what you're saying. So generally speaking, you want to keep all runoff flowing in the same direction as it is now. If we decided, and that's, the Mass Stormwater Bylaw also prescribes that. If we decided that if, and I haven't even looked at it, if there were catch basins or drainage within Fitchburg Road, and we sent all of the runoff that way, there would be a potential to actually dry up that wetland system and the stream, and over time,
Okay.
it could potentially be no more, which is not, environmentally speaking, would not be a good solution.
So in essence, there's an environmental benefit for keeping the runoff going in the direction that it's going right now.
Yeah, generally speaking, you want to keep everything flowing to where it is today. That's
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am?
Sarah with the Shirley Road. I just wanted to know that I was very interested in the DPW director's memo. I can't like summarize it and ask the questions, but the part that I was interested in is I was interested in if we're going to have to pay anything in addition to the water connection and the sewer connection and the notification.
Yeah. I looked at that too. We're looking for a waiver for the connection fees, which is a considerable amount of money.
We don't have answers for that yet. Like I said earlier, we've just opened the door tonight.
But is that, I mean, that's.
Is that negotiable? I don't know.
No, I mean, but that's what bothered me about the scope of the ZBA, because we don't waiver fees for connections and stuff like that, and that's what it's asking for.
Well, you do under a comprehensive
We
permit.
do here.
You do
Okay.
that, Yeah,
This is the first thing. Okay.
yeah.
Rules change.
Okay, well, that's why I looked at it and it just didn't look like it was something that was our purview.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
probably should hear from Paul at
Would you
this
like
Well,
point.
he's absolutely next on my list. Absolutely. That's, and when there was no one, Sarah, did your question get answered?
It did, thank you.
All right. Please, by all means, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Paul Haverty, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, and Silverstein out of Concord, Massachusetts. I'm here tonight representing the board through a grant from Massachusetts Housing Partnership. It's their technical review program. Just to answer that last question, in my experience with the Housing Appeals Committee, they take the position that no board is required to grant waivers of local fees in order to make a project economic. However, they do encourage boards to consider granting waivers of some or all fees as necessary for a project. So that's something that's really, and it is within the purview of the board to grant. I've seen numerous projects where boards have granted waivers of local fees in one way or another. And it's quite often a trade-off for something else that the board wants that is going to cost the applicant money. And the board says, well, okay, well, but if you provide this, then we'll waive something here. It's something you should keep an open mind about, but recognize that it's not an absolute requirement that you grant. Unlike a lot of other waivers that have been requested by the applicant, which, for instance, they're asking for use waivers, right? Because this is located in 3 different zoning districts. Well, in certain of the zoning districts, it wouldn't be allowed at all, and where in another zoning district, it might be allowed the use by a special permit. That would certainly render the project uneconomic if this board were not to grant those waivers, and the applicant could then take an appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee, and it would very clearly render the project uneconomic. So then the board would have the burden of proving that there are legitimate issues of local concern that outweigh the regional need for affordable housing. That's an extremely high standard for a board to meet. It is very rarely done. So there are different sort of considerations depending on the waiver, the type of waiver request. Also, going back to the waiver list, I was reviewing them as this hearing was ongoing. It's a very thorough list. I mean, it's 10 pages, but it needs to be, because I will tell you, for the most part, when I'm representing boards and I see developers come in and providing an initial waiver list, it's much shorter and it's incredibly incomplete. Where they're asking for blanket waivers of your entire zoning bylaw, of your entire wetlands bylaw. Thankfully, this waiver is much more specific, this waiver list. So I think it's a very good approach from this applicant to be as specific as they are. I think there may be certain areas where additional specificity may be needed, but it's too early in the process to really look too closely at that, because as Attorney Kiefer has noted, it changes. Project designs very frequently change during the course of the process. The requested waivers change during the course of the process. My biggest concern for the board tonight is to identify the areas in which it wants to conduct peer review, because as...
Can you explain that, please?
Sure. So the board, it's not presumed that every single, Board of Appeals in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has sufficient expertise within its ranks to review these types of developments. Mm-hmm. So the board is allowed to retain outside consultants to assist it with its review of the material submitted by the applicants. And the applicant is required to pay money into a 53G account so that the board can retain those peer review consultants. Again, as you noted, it's a short time frame that this board has. It's 180 days from tonight is when the board is required to close the public hearing. And that time goes really quickly. So the sooner that you identify the areas in which you want to conduct peer review and identify who you're going to retain to do that peer review, the more quickly this process gets completed and the better shape that you're going to be in. So just having listened to some of the discussion tonight, I mean, civil engineering peer review is pretty much every single project that's done. Stormwater, it sounds like, is going to be something the board's going to want to peer review. Traffic is going to be something the board's going to want to peer review, and potentially wetlands/wildlife impacts. Wildlife is not something that's always reviewed, but in this instance, when you have a couple of different natural heritage issues involved, you may want to look at that, I don't know. But wetlands, certainly you have a local bylaw. They are requesting waivers from that local bylaw. You should get somebody to come in and review that and advise you, in terms of what waivers should be granted and whether or not, there are specific waivers that should not be granted. I will say a lot of the waivers that are being requested in that waiver list aren't specifically necessary. And again, I applaud the applicant for including them, because it's always better to highlight things than to not. But a lot of them are procedural waivers. For instance, there are a number of waivers relating to site plan review. This is a comprehensive permit. It's one-stop shopping. You do not have to go to other boards and commissions in order to get permits under local requirements. you do not have to request waivers of site plan review. It's automatically subsumed into the comprehensive permit that the board issues. Special permits, you do not have to separately request special permits under local bylaws. Those permits are subsumed into the process. But again, it's very helpful to call them out. And what I like to do when I'm drafting a decision for a board is to actually keep the request in there, note that it's a procedural request and therefore denied. And what this does is it makes the administration of the project easier. After after the permit's issued, still have to go through final review, review of final plans. Building inspector has to review, issue permits. It's always helpful to know exactly what provisions have been waived, what provisions have been reviewed as not needing a waiver, but specifically with the board stating waiver was not necessary. It's not applicable to this project. So that's, again, part of the process that we'll get to when we begin drafting the decision. And that's pretty much all I have, unless you have any other specific questions.
I know that the state says that a lot of the local zoning bylaws don't apply.
Right. So that's not exactly how it works. Everything applies, right? But the Board of Appeals on all local bylaws is the permit granting authority. The applicant has the right to request waivers of specific provisions. The applicant is not required to prove that each waiver request would render the project uneconomic if not granted. It's whether the waivers in the aggregate would render the project uneconomic. So you look them, you get all of the waivers, that
Okay,
you're
so we
approving
don't
or not
have to
approving.
worry about what the state says that those don't apply.
Unless this board grants a waiver of a specific provision
Right.
of the zoning bylaws, of your wetlands bylaws, of any other local rule or requirement, it is applicable unless the board grants a waiver.
Okay.
The state doesn't supersede us on anything?
So the state supersedes in the sense that if you have local boards issuing state permits, such as the Conservation Commission under the Wetlands Protection Act,
Right.
if this were, to be on the Title V system rather than on sewer,
Right.
the Board of Health under Title V, those are, the Board of Appeals does not have jurisdiction over those issues.
Right.
You don't have jurisdiction over building permit issues. That's a state law that's being overseen by a local employee. It's only local rules and requirements that this board is stepping into. So if you've got a local wetlands bylaw in addition to the Wetlands Protection Act, you're issuing the permit under the local wetlands bylaw, but not under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Could I just ask a question too while we're just getting our ducks in a row here? What would you recommend for scheduling for the board? Typically, we meet one time a month. We're going to meet more than that, I would assume.
Yeah, I don't recommend more than every other week. I know, that you
More than every other week?
No, I said I don't recommend
Okay.
more than the other week. And I think although you're going to want to meet, maybe not want, but you're going to feel like you need to meet more frequently, you're also going to run into situations where the applicant is not going to be able to turn around information quickly enough to make 2 meetings in a month worthwhile. So it's a little bit of give and take because it really depends on how quickly the applicant can get information submitted to the board and to the peer review consultants and moving from there. I've heard that the traffic study is still in the works and is to be submitted soon. I don't know if it would be ready in 2 weeks, if you would be planning to hold another meeting then, whether they would be actually prepared to come to you and present any new information. So it's really going to be something that's going to be in some flow. I think you can try to plan for a meeting every other week, but I don't think that you're going to be able to actually get to meet every other week.
In terms of peer reviews, those have to go through the RFP process?
No.
They don't?
They don't.
Okay, so you can just pick a consultant?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, so there's only 2 bases for a applicant to object to a peer review consultant that has been chosen by the board. One is whether they have a conflict of interest. If it's someone that they've previously consulted with regard to this specific project, that would be a conflict, they couldn't work on it. or if they don't have the requisite expertise in the particular subject matter. So if you're going to retain a traffic engineer to review the stormwater, yeah, that's a reason for objection.
But we would just decide, okay, traffic study, we want to go with this company. We don't have to
It's
issue a proposal to.
you don't have to. Well, it's helpful to issue
Yeah.
an RFP to try to get
Best practice, yeah.
Yes.
exactly, and you want to see because I mean, first of all, the board should be looking at the scope,
Right.
of the proposed proposal, and you should be looking at the cost because you don't want the regulations state you should be working with the applicant trying to keep the
Right.
cost reasonable. It shouldn't be something above and beyond what would be imposed upon a non-subsidized housing development in the
Now my
town.
question is, we generate the RFPs and the scopes, the ZBA does?
Yes.
Okay.
But that can be shared with the applicant, and the applicant can provide some feedback on that. I mean, I'm going to presume that the town, the planning board, has consultants that they work with frequently.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that that's who you're probably going to reach out in the first instance.
Okay.
I don't know,
Otherwise,
the
with
conservation, probably has their own consultants that they work
Public
with on
Works
wetlands.
would too, I would imagine.
Yep. So, I mean, is that something, obviously, we wouldn't do that during a board meeting. We could, the administrative staff could handle that with consultation from like a couple members of the board, so we don't have a
That's-
open meeting law violation.
Oh, that's always the way I recommend that it be done, because otherwise, if you have to wait a month,
Right.
it's an unnecessary waste of time.
So what we propose is, Alan, Alicia, Dan Van Shalkwick, Heather, our conservation agent. We could have 2 members of this board assist us with putting together those scopes and the RFPs to go out. But if we have 2 members with us, we don't have to post a meeting,
Right.
basically. And, it's not open meeting law. And we don't waste time.
Trying to connect the dots here, it appears to me that our focal point is going to be the waiver list.
The waiver list, the site plan, you're going to want to make sure that the site plan actually works. This is why you want to retain a civil engineer to review that. You want to look at the stormwater, you want to look at, the traffic certainly is a big concern.
But the stormwater, is the stormwater complete? Was that, it is complete? Okay.
That's
So
in the pack, yeah.
we can start there, we could,
You could, I don't think you're going to get a peer review consultant retained and have that analysis, that stormwater report analyzed in any substantive matter
oh, no,
within 2 weeks from now.
that's a couple months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least a month, I would think. So,
Well, from the RFP to a result, I would expect to see a couple months.
we're going to hope more quickly than that.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
2 months is, you're letting a lot of time go.
I'm trying to piece together planning for this board, how we're going to, yes, ma'am?
I was, if I may, just offer, if it's of interest to the board, the applicant is happy to submit some proposed scopes for you to consider, if that helps. If it seems to the board that it's a kind of an overwhelming task how to do it, we've all done 40B projects in the past, and happy to just submit those to Carly, and
Sure.
they will be circulated for your
Absolutely.
consideration. And as Paul mentioned, ideally, it would be great if the peer reviewers could be identified, the scope, once the board decides what they want the scope to share, what they've thought with the applicant, and to have a peer reviewer lined up as soon as possible to get this moving forward. I know the first part, there is always somewhat of a delay, but I think Paul's right that a month is reasonable. And as he mentioned, once the hearing opens, the board under 40B is to conduct its work within 180 days. And NOAA is very motivated to get answers to the board's questions as quickly as possible. And in part, this isn't really a board consideration, but it's a real world consideration. In order for NOAA to get its applications into DHCD, ideally, if it can get a decision by the board by the end of this year to get in for that schedule, because what it then does for a funding schedule for the state. Otherwise, if it doesn't, it gets pushed behind. There's it could be a year. So just to put out to the board that NOAA is very motivated to be as responsive to the board's questions, to peer reviews, to work it in as tight of a review window as possible.
You've cut 60 days off the review.
I think 30.
Yeah, I feel like 30.
No, it's because next month, this is the end of July. So we have August, September, October, November, December, 5. Okay, so
30 days.
30 days. All right.
Right. And, again, just to, right, we're just trying to avoid a potential year in waiting.
Well, I understand what you're
but,
doing.
and again, it's,
If you don't get it by the end of the year, it might not make it to the table.
till the next year.
And the way that the LIHTC funding works, frequently you don't get into the first time you submit your proposal, so it could be 2 years.
Okay.
So in practical terms, the sooner we could look at your scopes, the better, and then we can modify them based on which ones. I mean, I anticipate looking at the one on the wetlands quite closely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the Conservation Commission too, but, so it's easier to add to a scope that you already have or make modifications.
Right, exactly. So if it's helpful to the board, that's why we're offering to submit kind of a framework.
So I think what the board probably should do right now is give some direction in terms of the areas in which you want to conduct the peer review. So I had thrown out some
We
suggestions.
don't know that yet.
Well, I mean, I threw out civil engineering, stormwater, traffic, wetlands, and wildlife.
Okay.
So are those,
4, thereabouts, yeah.
okay. Is there any other area that, at this point, where you think peer
I
review is
don't know
necessary?
yet.
Yeah, we're not
I'm
far
not
enough
even-
into this to know.
Yeah, that's,
To be quite candid,
So-
I
so
saw
those-
the package that was posted on the website, but I haven't done a deep dive in there to look other than broad brush what it is. I mean, I didn't get into the nuts and bolts of it, so I can't really say what I want to look at because I just saw it actually earlier today.
okay.
But I think the 4 that we named, civil engineering, stormwater, traffic, and wetlands/wildlife, that definitely
That's a
will get us
start.
started.
Yeah, I think that there are other areas that are occasionally peer reviewed. I know architecture is sometimes the subject of a peer review. I'm not sure that that's going to be necessary here. There is also the ability to peer review a pro forma, but that only comes at the end of the process after a draft decision has been issued. In this instance, I'm not sure that's going to be something the board's good. Frankly, I never recommend reviewing a pro forma because I don't know that it really provides the board with any usable information.
I don't see where it would, but that's,
Yeah.
And when we talk about the civil peer review, break that down for me. What does that look like?
So all of the civil engineering, aspects of the site plan. So it's going to be a review of the site plans.
That's what I want to focus on.
Yeah.
And so would it make sense now for the board to determine what 2 members could work with the town staff to get this ball rolling as far as working on scopes and developing an RFP, which pretty much standard, we have them. But we certainly want board participation, at least, at 2 members, I would say.
yeah, that seems reasonable.
Jess, you seem interested. I don't know if it's something you have time for, but
Well, I'm definitely interested in the wetlands wildlife impact. I'm not sure, and stormwater. I'm not sure I have the expertise for civil engineering or traffic.
Let's see input you get.
So I think the civil engineering and stormwater is probably covered by the same consultant. Wetlands, wildlife, perhaps by the same as the civil engineering and stormwater, but it could
Not
definitely
usually.
be, it really depends on the size of the
I'll do
firm.
the civil engineering.
The what?
I'll do the civil engineering.
Okay, so that will probably be civil engineering and stormwater together.
Yeah, those are
What can I
generally
do
done
for
by
you,
the same
sir?
firm.
Mr. Chair, Mark Archibald, the town planner. The only issue that it's potential peer review consultant that has not been mentioned that I could see may be considered. It would be a landscape architect to consider the overall site design beyond architecture. And, it falls in the area between engineering and the actual
Architecture.
So landscape architecture might be a good way to review not only the landscaping, but the flow and the overall design. But I don't, because of the constrained nature of the site, I don't see that changing much. I'm just putting that out as an idea. Also, I make the offer to assist whoever with the traffic consultant RFP. I've written several of those for the planning board over the last few years.
Thank you.
And actually, it's through the traffic consultant peer review that you will have the questions of offsite impacts come up. They will address that issue of the offsite impacts, improvements of Fitchburg Road, etc. that may be necessitated by the project.
All right.
They should also be able to address the parking space issue.
Yes.
Right.
You want the same two people, or can you rotate?
You can rotate. So I would envision this would be during the day. We can also, like, whoever is going to be, we could Zoom you in, so it's not that you have to be here. But the town hall team, it will be primarily during the day. But what I'm planning on doing is getting a look. We'll get the scopes, and then we'll break it into 4 teams to start. I mean, I'll be on all the teams, and Mark and Alan and Alicia will be on all the teams. And then it sounds like you and Jess would want to do the stormwater and civil engineering. Again, we don't need expertise in civil engineering. We just need your input on the scope and the RFP. And then we'll go with traffic, and Mark will certainly be a big part of that, Mark Archambault. And then we'll go with wetlands and wildlife, and we'll have a good start to the project for the peer review. Sound good?
Sounds good.
And we've also recently issued peer reviews. Mark just did one for traffic for Stratton Hill, and Conservation just did one for wetlands for Stratton Hill as well. So we have recently done peer reviews. So that
And you've already retained the consultants on those?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we now have.
Okay.
Well, one we can't get the same consultant for because it's BSC group.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So why don't we'll get started on working that tomorrow right away.
Sure, send out RFP.
We'll start working on this. We'll get the scopes, and then we'll start putting everything together.
So what are the 4 areas of focus?
Okay, so stormwater,
Yeah.
traffic,
Yeah.
civil engineering, and then wetlands.
Okay, so Sam, Jess are on civil and
I'm not on civil.
No, I'm doing the civil, she's doing the wetlands.
Okay.
Well, civil and stormwater are probably going to be part of the same scope.
That's fine.
But we'll have input on stormwater
Yep.
probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
so traffic is open.
Traffic's
Traffic.
open.
And what was the other one?
Wetlands/wildlife.
I mean, I'll jump into the other 2 with.
Well,
whoever
Jess
else.
will do wetlands
Yeah.
for sure.
How about traffic? John, you want a piece of that?
Sure.
All right, John and I traffic.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that leave anything out?
I don't think
Nope.
so. Ron, here.
Who would we have for a single point of contact? Would that be you? Between
Carly. Carly.
it would be you so you're going to do all the coordination between the contractor
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and the town. You will represent.
Yes, and then I'll work with the town hall staff, and work with you, work with Paul. And Alicia and Alan and Mark will all be helping with me, so.
So for all intent and purposes, we're leaving the schedule intact as it is.
Yeah, so our next meeting would be August something.
Well, when I
August 17th.
When I look at this, it says no later than 15 days from the opening of the public hearing, we have to give written notice if we have an issue with the safe harbors.
But we're not even close, right?
Yeah.
Where does this get us in relation to safe harbor? If this development goes ahead as proposed?
Explain
put-
safe harbor first.
Right, yeah. Would you
All
mind,
right, so,
Paul?
so there are two different types of safe harbor for Chapter 40B. There are the statutory safe harbors, so those are the 10% total housing units, which most everyone knows about. There's also the 1.5% general land area minimum, and then there's 0.3%, which no one's ever tried. Then there are also regulatory safe harbors, so that includes like a large project exemption, recent progress, related application, and then housing production plan. So housing, and I'm presuming that's what we're looking at here is a housing production plan safe harbor. So
Alicia can speak to that.
Alicia?
So, we are losing our affordable housing right now. We went from 8.66% down to 6.4% in the last 4 years. That has to do with a lot of our affordable housing was under our housing rehab program, and they changed the regulations on the 10% subsidized housing inventory to only include properties that have deed restrictions. We, even with our housing production plan, one of the things in our housing production plan was to look for a friendly, affordable housing program, and this one of the reasons that we've been very, open in talking to this group is because they do have such a good reputation, and they are bringing in 100% affordable housing, which will possibly take us over our 10%. So that is something, I don't think that we would actually qualify, but I'm not the lawyer, so for a safe harbor under the housing production plan, because the housing production plan
What would that do for us?
So the housing production plan provides for either a 1-year safe harbor if you approve 0.5% of your total housing stock in a 1 calendar year, or a 2-year safe harbor if you approve 1% of your total housing stock within 1 year. My understanding is that you have not reached either of those milestones as of the date that the comprehensive permit application was filed, and that's the date in which is applicable. Right? You look at the date that the application is filed, and if you haven't reached any of the safe harbors, it doesn't matter if you go past them later. So if somehow, some way you wound up over 10% while this hearing is ongoing, you couldn't use that safe harbor against this project.
Okay.
And if somehow, and I'm not sure that would, timing-wise, they would be able to get in an application before them, but if this project put you over 10%, if somebody else were to get a project eligibility letter and submit an application before you close this hearing and issue a comprehensive permit, then if this takes you over 10%, that wouldn't be able to be used against that subsequent applicant. It's only if you are at the safe harbor as of the date that you receive a comprehensive permit application.
Okay. So in theory, in 180 days, if it was approved as is and we were over the 10%, we would be within that safe harbor range?
Correct, except for the 180 days is to close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, you have 40 days to render a decision. But again, we've already heard a request to try to get, a little quicker on that timeline. So, and usually, I recommend boards actually keep the hearing open, issue their, review their decision during a public hearing, because it allows you to get input from the applicants. Once you close the public hearing, you can't get any more input from the applicants, no more input from the public. So it's better to have actually at least initiated that process with the public hearing still open, which then allows you to actually issue your decision much more quickly. And if you were in a situation where there was another project coming in that the town felt was hostile, you're going to want to move things more quickly.
So in terms of our future meetings being in person or Zoom, I know you have issues with travel sometimes.
The governor extended it to March of '23.
Right.
Yep.
And as far as I'm concerned, and we'll put it on the table right now, I just as soon keep it as a remote. What do you think? John?
if we can be as productive as in the Zoom as we can at the table, and that's fine with me. I mean, I think that there's a lot of work to do in just organizing a plan as how we're gonna take all these different, like going through the other department heads' stuff and going through the variance list.
Does it matter whether we're here or at home?
I don't really think so. I mean,
And that's my opinion too. I mean, there's a boatload to go through, and we won't get it done here. It's that simple.
what does that mean when we get it done here?
We come in here for our ZBA meetings, and it's going to be difficult to start compiling.
So we're going to have
this.
additional meetings to address this and all these variances.
I would think.
As needed, yeah.
I would think.
I'm thinking
We're going to have more in the future months. We still have a ZBA to run.
That's true.
And we will have applicants to deal with. So I think we would want to keep this separate.
Yeah. I would just like to see some kind of agenda of the things we're going to address in what order based on the priority.
Give me some time to go through it. I'll try to put something together.
Yeah.
They're going to give us a format, and if I have a format to start with, I have to start at ground zero. So we'll be able to address it when we get together. The whole pretense is whether or not we're going to review or discuss what we're doing as a ZBA here or on a Zoom call.
I'm open to the Zoom.
Ron?
That's how it goes. If we have to meet personally, then we'll do that.
Jess?
I'm fine with Zoom. If we have to meet more than once a month, which it looks like we will, Zoom makes it more easier to.
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about scheduling this room.
Yeah.
Mike?
I mean, Zoom is convenient. I feel old-fashioned, traditional is saying it, but I do like being in the room.
Well,
I like sitting
it
around the
affords
table
it affords personal contact.
Right.
I get that.
But
in this instance, I think efficiency is going to override that.
yeah, I mean, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. I think it's, I believe we saw a lot more resident and citizen participation over
Before?
the last
Oh, yeah.
2 years
Yeah.
because they could do it in pajamas from home. So I do like the fact that we can have more residents participate. It's easier on applicants. If we see a surge in the fall, we're not scrambling at the last minute to book a room. So Zoom's fine by me.
Ms. Whibby, did you have something you wanted to ask?
I was gonna ask if you think that's gonna be adequate for the traffic.
I'm sorry?
I was gonna ask if you think, I was gonna ask how, I was gonna make a statement. Can I make a statement? No?
No.
Okay. I can't speak then, honestly, I think everything sounds good, but my question would be, how do you make sure that the public has a little bit of access to the traffic changes that are about to come?
All of our meetings are advertised and posted. Public access is encouraged.
Yeah. Okay.
And if I could, we have a page on the ZBA's web page dedicated to this project. So all studies, reviews, everything will be there as a repository.
It's there now.
Yeah,
Everything we have to date.
Right, to date. So
Peer review.
my intent is to obviously keep that populated as we go through the process.
All right.
Because honestly, it makes my life easier when someone's looking for it. I can just say it's right here on the website. And it's better for all of you. You just go to one place to get all your information. So that's definitely the intent.
So our next meeting is a month.
Yes, a month away.
It would be August 17th.
That being said,
And it would be Zoom, you're saying?
yes,
Okay.
I saw, where did I read it? I want to ask this question. I don't know if it was I think it was in one of the packages on the website, they have issued sets of drawings. Where are they?
My office, right? There's some here, and then there's
They have-
somewhere in my office.
There's a couple sets of drawings, there's application, I want a paper copy of everything.
Okay, yeah, I can do that for you. I have it all.
Thank you.
Does anyone else while I'm making copies?
When you're talking like 11 by 17 or
No, like full-size plans.
Yeah,
full-size plans?
see plans.
Okay.
Yeah. I can go-
Everyone?
You know what, Carly, tell me out. It's all online.
It's
I
all
do.
online, but
Yeah.
you two, okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys, John?
No, because they're they're in the package, right?
Yep.
So I can
Yep.
look at them here.
I
Yeah.
just
Same.
want to work, I work off drawings, I'm an old engineer.
Same here.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am?
I was just gonna say, if I may, we had submitted 2 full-size plans with the application package as well as, was it 10 or 12 of the half-size?
I thought- yeah, I thought-
Those were distributed to the boards, but
Yeah.
it's a matter of getting hard copies to the board quickly. If you just wanna let us know, I'm sure that BSC or Frank can, send those direct,
Yeah, if you could do 2 sets of the full-size plans in the,
of both civil and
Yeah.
architectural.
yeah,
We can do that.
awesome, great. And then I'll get it to Jess and Sam.
I won't,
Half size?
I won't need it for a week at least. I'm not even gonna be here, I'll be out of the state.
So 1 full-size and 1 half-size, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm half size. Just call me half size.
Are you going to be involved in each of our meetings? How does this work?
Generally, that's what I would do, yes.
Okay. Is
Schedule permitting.
yours or ours?
Mine.
Okay,
I sometimes have, meetings on the same night that you're going to have a hearing.
all right. And you're guiding us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And I will,
And do you agree with our first steps? How-
absolutely, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
A question. And when we're issuing the RFPs, we don't have to come back to the board and get everybody's agreement on it. They can just be issued.
Correct.
Face value.
It's standard practice for us.
Yep.
I mean, not this board, but other boards, so yeah.
Because we don't usually do that.
Right. So we'll do that on a staff level, but with obviously input as we've described.
Very good.
So my only other question, Sam, is we're gonna meet a month from now. In the interim, because we only have 180 days to do this, what are we doing in the next month?
Exactly.
That's what I want.
They're going to give me a format for a plan for us to go forward on. She gives me that format, I will write it up and say, this is what we should be doing, and send it to all of us so we got an idea which way to go.
Okay.
So that's coming from the applicant?
The applicant's given us a format,
For the RFPs, the scope of services for the
scope of
RFP.
services.
So Paul, could
Right,
you?
but that's just for those 4 points.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, what we should be doing is looking at the drawings, looking at the specifications, and looking at the waiver list.
Exactly. The waiver list and the town comments,
Yes,
is that,
that's the way you should be
that's going to
starting.
be next month?
Yes, I would think.
Okay.
And Paul, could you speak to that, like basically what we would have on our agenda for next meeting, based on where we're at right now?
It really depends on what we can get from the applicant by then. I don't know, I don't think you're going to get a civil engineering or stormwater review complete by then.
Right.
I think traffic, if we get the report quickly enough,
Mhm.
could. Traffic tends to, be something that you can get turned around more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be what I would shoot for. I would leave, but I wouldn't limit an agenda item to just a particular topic.
Okay.
Because I find that you wind up, sometimes you have a topic that you cover, in 45 minutes to an hour.
Mhm.
And at the end, you're going to waste the rest of the night. And I think you should leave it open,
Right.
to the greatest extent practicable. I mean, obviously, the applicant is going to want to limit the consultants that they bring with them to a particular hearing, although easier when it's Zoom than when they have to come here in person.
Right.
But I would be shooting for the traffic review if we can get that information in time.
Is that,
I anticipate that we're probably gonna be submitting the traffic probably by Friday,
Oh, yes.
right? Maybe
Yeah.
even tomorrow, so,
So that should be able to be turned around by next month.
Okay.
and that's on us, Joe? we're the traffic scope guys, so probably.
I've been playing in traffic all my life.
All right, so that will be kind of our next plan, is to review the study from the traffic study, the peer review of the traffic study. We'll just get that turned around, so Mark, I'll be reaching out tomorrow morning we'll get that going.
I can give you a name of a couple consultants.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we'll connect tomorrow. All right, that works.
Good?
Because that's really one of my concerns, is, I know.
Yeah, I'm
You
just
know,
figuring I need a flow chart of what we're gonna do through this process so that we have everything done in the time that it's supposed to get done, so we're not hanging with stuff unfinished.
or we're trying to get 3 meetings in, and we're meeting on Christmas Eve.
Exactly.
right? That doesn't
I'm busy that
do it,
night.
yeah, next to it. It doesn't do anything for the applicant, it doesn't do anything for the board, town staff, anybody involved. So
Right.
I just want to make sure that, and with your guidance, we'll go through this process in a smooth, transitional way, not.
But
everything all at
and
once.
recognize, just because you cover something one night doesn't mean you're gonna finish it that night.
Right.
We might get a peer review report from traffic consultants that identifies, 10 different things
Yeah.
that need to be addressed.
Right.
So we're gonna have to address traffic at another night as well, which again is why you don't wanna just limit it to one topic per night.
Yes, ma'am?
If I could make just one more suggestion for the next hearing, assuming that we have traffic and that only takes a limited amount of time. We received the comment letters from Board of Health, the planner, whatnot. Typically what I find is helpful for the ZBA is for the project team to provide responses to comments. So typically we just repeat what the comment that a town department or town staff made to the board, and then we provide a response to it. So it kind of helps, not real-time responses, but pretty close to when we've seen the comment letter be submitted to the board. So we're happy to have those submitted in advance of the August hearing, and then walk through
Good.
those if the board has any questions. That
Sure.
would be
That's very
helpful.
DPW had a very, very detailed.
They did, yeah. So it was very helpful. So.
It's excellent.
That'd be great.
Good.
So as far as next steps, we would continue, obviously, we keep the hearing open, we just continue it to a
Yes.
date and time certain, which we know will be August 17th at 6 on Zoom.
Yes.
So we can just have a motion to that effect.
Say that again, Carly, I'll.
Motion to what?
To continue.
To continue the hearing, yes.
Sure. I make a motion to continue the public hearing till August 17th at 6 p.m.
On Zoom.
on Zoom.
Yes.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
All right.
All right. Next item on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you very
Right.
much.
Next item on the agenda, approval of meeting minutes from June 15th. Any comments? I didn't see anything.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 15th,
As written.
as written.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.